Conversation. Around the Table with Vicki is my new local radio show and podcast discussing leadership, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, faith, and family. Saturdays at 10 a.m. on WIQO.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
You ready for me to go out on a real limb to start this Memorial Day Friday edition of the Fast Lane, TJ? Are you ready?
I think so. I think I'm ready.
You know what? It may not be pretty tonight at 10 p.m. or tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern time when Liberty and Oregon square off in softball. But this version of Liberty versus Oregon has at least a more realistic chance of being competitive compared to the most recent versions of Liberty versus Oregon in softball. How big of a limb is that? How much of a hot take is that? Or is it lukewarm or kind of room temperature, TJ?
I think it's lukewarm. I could agree with it.
You know, I would say lukewarm is probably an accurate assessment, maybe even room temperature take. Good old comfy 73 degrees that room temperature should be. The thing of it is for Liberty, the Oregon game was never going to be all that competitive if Oregon cared about that game. As somebody who may not have been in a state where you could legally bet on the game, I'm not saying I wanted Liberty to lose because it would have been better for business if they had won, but I felt pretty convicted in the outcome that transpired, which it did. And yes, that might have been a little bit of extra, as Kenny Powers would say.
Dollar bills, y'all.
From that particular moment. I will throw March Madness from this past year, though, into an interesting category, TJ. It was never close and competitive, largely because Liberty, it was the one night out of, the last 3 months of basketball for Liberty where they just couldn't buy a bucket. And it just happened to come at the worst time. And, to be honest, TJ, that stuff just happens in sports. I get all the consternation about Liberty and, yes, if you had other skilled players that, maybe tall guards that could get to the rim, great. But here's the reality. If you have tall guards that are good enough to shoot threes at the rate the Liberty guards did and get to the rim, here's a shocker. Ready for some breaking news? They're probably not at Liberty. They're probably getting offered a lot more.
Dollar bills, y'all.
To go somewhere else. I don't blame them for that. So, again, for Liberty, the recipe was you have the players you have, you hope the three-point shots go, and from there, it opens things up. Yes, it's a more limited game plan in basketball than other teams, but I frankly think Liberty could run it back with a similar game plan next year, and they might not beat a team like Oregon in a 5-12 matchup or however the seeding comes out if Liberty's fortunate enough in men's basketball to make it to the tournament. But I at least see a path to success. But the reality is, what Liberty has in softball this year, and this is part of the reason why I think Liberty fans embrace this softball team. And maybe I'm off. Dave Walls of ABC 13 WSET will join us around 5:30 today here in the Fast Lane to give us his perspective. He's also covered University of Lynchburg baseball, their series in the Super Regionals against Rowan, kicking off today over at City Stadium. Game 2 tomorrow, 11 a.m. is when that gets underway. But the thing of it is for Liberty softball, I think actually there are a lot of things that are transferable from Texas A&M that are things that could serve Liberty well against Oregon. Oregon's tough. Doing it again, repeating what Liberty did, same intensity, same steely focus and resolve is tough. But I don't necessarily think that it's impossible for the Flames to come out and get a victory. One of those is because, again, leadership starts at the top, and Coach Dr. Dot Richardson was pretty emphatic that while there's a level of exhilaration with the win against Texas A&M, it was not the end goal.
This is not, they're not saying, okay, we've achieved our goal. Their goal is the World Series. And it's not just to be there, it's to win it. So it's not like we're going to go home and say, okay, it's done. They're hungry. And they're going to stay humble. And they're going to keep striving to be the best they can be. And their best is good enough.
Now, it's good enough. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. And again, I think from a betting standpoint, Oregon favorite, they should be the favorite. in softball tonight. Again, I don't know everything about it, but just because Liberty beat Texas A&M doesn't mean that now all of a sudden you come back to Lynchburg, then you have to go back across country, and they've been there for a couple days. So hopefully the rest advantage from a Flames fan perspective is something that, the travel has been mitigated by the ability for Liberty to do that, and chartering a plane and not having to deal with all the hassles of regular flights like normal Americans have to deal with. And again, hey, God bless them. Other sports teams do at other levels. Liberty's got Power 4 caliber resources to afford that. Good for them. But I think the bigger picture takeaway of that is Liberty's not focused on just getting there and being satisfied. That's elementary as this sounds, TJ. That's step number one for the Lady Flames' chances is, okay, you had your moment to enjoy beating Texas A&M, but not resting on your laurels and knowing how to put that in the rearview mirror. It doesn't mean that Liberty's going to make it competitive or win tonight or tomorrow. They could get blown out in both of these matchups. It would stick with the, in all sports, Liberty-Oregon trend of Liberty having a tough time really sustaining anything against the Ducks. But I think Liberty's more equipped than men's basketball or football, partially matchup-wise, partially roster construction-wise, but also the fact that they've got a blueprint for what they just did against Texas A&M that's transferable, and you combine that with the idea of this not being the end goal, that's where all of a sudden, I'm going to curse here in the fast lane, but there's at least a level of hope that Liberty Flames fans should have that they can make this fun out in Oregon as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Liberty softball, it's going to be really tough out there. But I think right now with the way Dot has this team programmed, I think they stand a shot. I don't see a world where this could get out of hand, in all honesty.
It's a real good point. I mean, if Liberty's playing their best, they should be competitive and they have every chance to win this, even if they fall down early. And these are things that I touched on the InsaneRadioDeals.com fast take that dropped at Fastlane, Edlane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for those little quick 30-second vignettes that we do on those social media platforms, as well as across the Virginia Talk Radio Network. But there are some transferable things for Liberty. One, we just shared with you, and that is, it not being the end goal and the Flames not being satisfied. Fantastic. The other is not panicking. Whether you fall down early, the Flames had experience against Texas A&M before battling back from that 3-0 deficit in the must-win game Sunday night. Whether it's that, or Texas A&M, runners on base. The tying and go-ahead runners were on base, and you've got a backup pitcher in there, and she gets the crucial strikeout to win the game, not panicking, as Rachel Roop astutely observed earlier this week.
I think there were multiple times this weekend just against Texas A&M in general where we were down and we were to come back, put a lot of runs up, and so that kind of carried it. Like, we were like, okay, we're down 3-0, but we've been down 4 and we've been down 5. We kind of used that momentum and just kind of didn't press. We were like, just let it happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to. So that's all we had to think about.
And the other point off of that, Liberty not panicking and pressing and being wowed by the moment. Not being satisfied with being there. Again, those are some intangible qualities. They're not statistically quantifiable or scouting report quantifiable. They're harder to measure, but Liberty's shown the fight that they need. But the other one that I think is more noteworthy is this team does have a good deal of depth of players that can beat you. In the circle, Elena Escobar, but Caitlin Yoder's an option there as well, not to mention the fact that this lineup, with a number of players that can provide timely hits. Savannah Jesse has done that, Rachel Roop, KK Madry. There are others that we could name, but you combine that with what Liberty now has in the circle. And Roop is the one that's going to need to carry the bulk of the load. If she's off all weekend, it's going to be tough for Liberty to win. Heck, if she's off in any of these games, it's going to put Liberty in a bind. But at least they've got somebody else that if her Achilles injury flares up or she starts to get fatigued and just can't go anymore like she experienced at Texas A&M, there's now proof of a backup at pitcher that can come in a clutch moment to combine with the hitters, and that's where Liberty. Doesn't mean they're going to beat Oregon, but personnel-wise, at least there's a path that you have some that they can actually pull that off.
Yoder told me before that inning, she said, when I'm struggling or just a lot of stuff's going on in my head, you either think about nothing or you think about the Lord. And I just thought about how blessed we were this weekend, what all we've came through, what all we've done to show the world who we are as a university and as a school for softball. And I was just giving it to the Lord. I literally have been over for the whole entire weekend, and I hadn't been seeing the ball well, like Coach had said, but I was trying to stay present on the defensive side, and I just got my pitch and I was able to deliver. So that was an awesome moment for sure. And I'm glad I was able to do that for the team.
That was Savannah Jesse, and kind of touching on some of the intangibles, but the big one is Caitlin Yoder, because that gives Liberty multiple pitching options to go with the deep lineup. And again, those are all reasons why Liberty Flames fans don't act like you're going to win this weekend. I think it's possible, no doubt about that, but I would still put my money on Oregon. I think 2-1 is probably the right score if you're going at it. I think Liberty can get a game out there. 2 is really tough. Even getting 1 and being competitive in others would be a step forward for Liberty for their program this year. But Super Regionals, it's the goal. I think the fact that the Liberty Flames are hungry enough, I like hearing that. You can look back on the run when the season's done, but you don't want to be rejoicing in the moment if you're the Flames fans too much. You got to balance that, which is an ever crucial thing. Much like it's crucial to balance everything that might go into your diet if you're somebody who's been afflicted by type 1 diabetes. And if you are in that spot, you might not know at all where to begin. That's where Tide can come in. The type 1 diabetes experience, they help families, especially ones that are new to the game of type 1 diabetes. But they also empower schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia because so many families know what to do, but the kids go off to school and all of a sudden the people at school may not know how to handle a situation with a diabetic. That's where Tide comes in. They provide resources, but there's more work to be done, which is why you can help by joining us at the Memorial Day 10K run and 2-mile walk for the type 1 diabetes experience, 8 a.m. this coming Monday. And yes, you can register over the weekend. If you decide at the last second, sign up, come on down. Race starts at 8. Packet pickup right before that. Downtown Lynchburg, the plaza near the train station area, the Depot Grill downtown. So you can go down and enjoy that experience and make a real difference, much like Easy Mobility Solutions. They help people that have been impacted negatively by mobility experiences and those people that are learning to live their best life, which is why they want to encourage you to help people with type 1 diabetes live their best physical life. Learn more, easymobilitysolutions.com, as well as the Lynchburg Ready Mix family. They personally have experienced type 1 diabetes within the Lynchburg Ready Mix family, which is why they are also committed to making this event as big as possible, but more importantly, helping the mission of the type 1 diabetes experience. Learn more, tide.org. That's T1de.org. Now, we might do 2 of these, but we're overdue. Speaking of Liberty, to start things off in the Fast 5 at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
How convenient. Yesterday in the Fast Lane, we learned that TJ's favorite driver is William Byron of Hendrick Motorsports because he's the Liberty University driver. And today, it was announced that he has a contract extension that will keep him tied to Hendrick Motorsports through the 2029 season. 2-time Daytona 500 winner. He's one of the top drivers as far as young drivers in the Cup Series. Does need to finish better at the end of the year. That has been a justifiable knock on William Byron. He wins the Daytona 500. He's won at Martinsville previously. He started fast, but is not finished with the level of strength that you need to see out of a driver that now Hendrick has committed to being in their stable. But you can tell the strength of this organization has been there for much of the regular season. Kyle Larson leads the way, but Byron is there. Chase Elliott has a championship. Alex Bowman been running great. And for William Byron and Hendrick to be tied up speaks to the strength of this organization and all of those drivers working very well together. It seemed like it was a no-brainer move as well. As much as you want to see more out of William Byron toward the end of the season, if you're a Byron fan or a Hendrick fan, and again, that's a very justifiable criticism given how he's not really contended for anything in the championship finale at Phoenix, not to mention the fact that he struggled over those last championship 8 races at Las Vegas, Miami, and Martinsville. Some of it just bad luck, but you got to find a way to get through over that hump like your teammates Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, who at least have one championship to their name. But overall, big picture, William Byron, it's a lot easier to do worse than better than William Byron if you're Hendrick Motorsports. And again, the tangible quality, and Rick Hendrick spoke after this about the quality of character as a racer and member around the team of William Byron. He fits into an organization that maybe is strong top to bottom in terms of sharing information and positioning all of their drivers to have chances to win races and play that version of the NASCAR lottery. Meanwhile,
number 4.
Big news that came down yesterday. The 2025 college football playoff will feature a change. The top 4 seeds will get first-round buys, but it is not something that hinges on being a conference champion. Look, I am all against the whole multiple bids for the SEC, a few fewer for the Big 12 and the ACC. And I get that the Big 12, the Big 10 and the SEC want you to know that they have
lots of power
and that they
will not
in their efforts to exercise and show how much they have as far as control of college football. But this is the right call when you're talking about the top teams getting seats. We saw in March Madness this year, and look, ACC fans, keep it in context. We've had years where Duke and Carolina have been number one seeds, or Virginia, Carolina, or Virginia, Duke. We've seen that as well, where multiple top seeds have been from, where of the top four seeds, two of them have been from one conference. It is not abnormal to see that in college basketball. I know the SEC was that way this year. They're a convenient punching bag, but the ACC and others have been in the same spot. I have no problem with that theory behind it, the top four seeds, because it's going to create better matchups down the stretch and more equitably distribute the probability of who's going to get a win. There is an entertainment product, but I think in terms of the fairness, and I know life isn't fair, and maybe that's another word we need to start beeping out when we ever say fair, because that's another curse word here in the fast lane. But as far as allowing everyone to have a level of hope, if you're a fan, one of the keys is every conference feeling like they have a legitimate chance to get their teams in that deserve to be in the college football playoff. Stacking it in favor of the SEC and the Big Ten, I understand that that's something they want. I understand that's not going away, but I don't view the reseeding as an indictment of that as much as it is just making sure you create the most equitable matchups based on how the teams have performed up to date during that season. Meanwhile,
number 3,
the White House announcing they have paused plans for a commission on college sports. This, according to multiple sources. There are a couple of parts that are worth mentioning with this. One, I don't always like the federal government getting involved in anything, but especially in something like college sports, as much of a mess as it is anybody's real welfare being endangered because college sports is not operating at maximum efficiency or the most just manner for every entity that's involved in college sports? No. So I have concerns. That being said, we are talking in a lot of cases here about a lot of these schools being large, publicly funded institutions. And when you are in a spot where you are taking taxpayer
dollar bills, y'all,
then you are subject to the whims of people that have
Lots of power.
and that being the government. And therefore, I understand the logic of the government maybe wanting to get involved because there is financial money and financial motives. There are financial motives that are at stake for the federal government. Now, the move is possibly rooted in the impact in Senate negotiations over college sports legislation. So this is kind of a give and take of the White House basically saying, hey, Republicans are in the White House, obviously, with Donald Trump, but also in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Let's let them take over this particular situation, especially because the efforts have been led in the Senate by Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas, Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. It's unclear how long the pause will be lasting, but it offers more time to possibly reach some kind of agreement on federal legislation that is much more bipartisan. Look, I am under no delusion. Again, if you want more political thoughts, go to Talk Radio 100.9 WIQO. I am under no delusion that they're going to learn to get along better than my 6-year-olds when they're in fighting mode like they were today, getting out of line at school. However, I would say this, when there's an opportunity for them to collaborate and work together, and this is one of those, hey, it's refreshing to see, even though I have no delusion that it's actually going to mean something going forward. Meanwhile,
number 2,
college basketball news. Texas Tech transfer Darian Williams, one of the top players in the portal who averaged 15 points per game and 5 rebounds and 3.5 assists for Texas Tech, which we know they have plenty of
dollar bills, y'all.
Based on the reports that Texas Tech gave their star player JT Toppin around $4 million to keep him, which is more than he would make in the first year of his initial NBA contract. But Darian Williams leaving Texas Tech, transferring to NC State. Big pickup. 6'6" junior, multi-skilled wingman that can go to the Wolfpack. Look, if I'm an ACC fan, I like this. You beat out Kansas for his services. This is a time where Kansas trying to commit more financially because of a down year and the idea that maybe you don't have Bill Self, a championship-winning, multi-time championship-winning college basketball coach. Who knows how long he's going to be around? This is a really big win for my guy, Will Wade at NC State. And I say my guy because, I don't care about paying players as much as some people do. I admire the fact that he was transparent with his team and players in school and program when he was being recruited by NC State during the NCAA tournament run. And I think it's part of why they upset Clemson, because he was transparent and everybody was still willing to play for him. But I love this. And Darian Williams going to NC State, sure, he probably got a lot of money. Sure, it's probably an insane amount of money. But hey, I'm cool with it, and I think it makes the ACC better from an ACC fan's perspective. It's showing that there are programs in the conference outside of Duke, Carolina, and Louisville that are willing to commit financially. You combine that with Virginia reportedly going over the $7 to $8 million mark for their roster. plus NC State, plus the 3 programs we mentioned. We know Miami has no problem spending money at any point, even if you have questions like I do about Jay Lucas being the coach. This is what the ACC needs. They've lagged so far behind that they only got 3 programs in the tournament this year, and only one of them was even respectable, that being Duke winning a game. They made it to the Elite 8. So if I'm the ACC, I love this move of Darian Williams picking a non-blue blood in the ACC and NC State over one of the big blue bloods in a school that we know will pay for big bucks for players in Kansas. To me, TJ, this is a big win for the ACC.
Yes, NC State and Will Wade bringing the program back up, and this is actually huge for the ACC because it's not just Duke and UNC dominating.
No, it definitely is not. Meanwhile, we go on to college sports in
number 2.
We didn't touch on this yesterday. Maybe we should have, but after a marathon game that ended, yes, it was a 9-inning game that ended at 2:19 a.m. when Virginia lost to Boston College 12-8. If Virginia does not make the NCAA tournament in baseball, and Jerry Ratcliffe said Monday, and you can go check it out at Fastlane Edley wherever you listen to podcasts, because right there, he thinks Virginia, they're still in the tournament. But 5 errors in this contest, a balk, and a couple of other things that popped up as well for Virginia. They will be kicking themselves about the loss to Boston College and the missed opportunities in Durham to get a victory and solidify their status. Again, I'm going to curse for a second. I hope Virginia makes the NCAA tournament because it's better for business the longer local teams are involved in postseason play, particularly in spring sports. But when I'm looking at the ACC as a whole, and Virginia in particular, I'm sitting there going, I've got real concerns about their resume because of this. I would like to see them get in, but I'm not exactly holding out hope that it's going to happen. Meanwhile, speaking of UVA,
number 1.
Former UVA tennis player Danielle Collins was caught multiple times all over the past week in a tournament leading up to the French Open, which, by the way, we will preview with Drew Dinsick, 5:45 p.m. today in the Fast Lane. But asking the camera person to give her and her opponent space during the match, saying, quote, "I need water. We're on a changeover. You don't need to be that close to me, and you don't need to be on top of Emma. It's wildly inappropriate," end quote. So I'm going to push back on this for a second. If you want to take a little bit, a smaller amount of
dollar bills, y'all,
and prize money, hey, I'm cool with it. But the reality is, while players should be paid more in tennis, and it doesn't exactly skew structurally to the players in terms of the setup for tennis, if you want the money, you kind of have to take the checks that come with it. And TV is the biggest source now, even with the amount of attendance at a lot of these tournaments, of money that goes into the coffers to fund players. If they're going to be around, you just have to learn to live with it. Again, personally for me, some players use that type of stuff as motivation, but a lot of players also know how to block it out, and it's a sign of mental focus and control. It's one of those, I know Danielle Collins is near the end, and she's getting, higher and higher in her not giving a what meter, but if I'm talking about tennis players, I prefer the don't let those little things bother you, especially when they are helping to fund you as well. Meanwhile, when we return in the Fast Lane, back to Liberty softball, plus local baseball with the University of Lynchburg and the Conference USA baseball tournament being at Liberty. All of that, maybe a little high school sports too, with ABC 13 WSET's Dave Walls when he joins us here in the Fast Lane on the VTR and Sports app and asks that smart speaker, open VTR and Sports.
Mark Dalton here with the Terry Auto Group. If you don't love your car, then you're simply just driving the wrong one. At Terry Volkswagen, Terry Subaru, Terry Auto Outlet, and the Terry Clearance Center, we've got the perfect new or used car for you. We make your car buying experience easy. Need help with imperfect credit? No problem. Our team works hard to get you approved and back on the road. Because when you shop at Terry, you drive away happy. Visit us at any of our 4 locations or online at terryautogroup.com. Terry Auto Group. You'll love our cars.
At Easy Mobility Solutions, we're proud to support the Memorial Day 10K run and 2-mile walk for the Type 1 diabetes experience. For over a decade, Easy Mobility Solutions has helped individuals rediscover their freedom through our proven process. Evaluate, educate, empower. Whether it's wheelchairs, stair lifts, platform lifts, or home accessibility modifications, we're here to make mobility easy. Join Easy Mobility Solutions on race day and support the Type 1 diabetes experience. Register at tide.org. That's T1,
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
Hi, I'm Robert O'Brien with Lynchburg Ready Mix. At age 7, our son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Our world changed instantly. We had to monitor blood sugar, count carbs prior to every meal. It was overwhelming. Thankfully, groups like Tide provide support when your world changes. Their programs and resources help people with type 1 diabetes live their best life. So please join Lynchburg Ready Mix at the Memorial Day 10K run and 2-mile walk for Tide so individuals like our son can still live an awesome life.
Start your Memorial Day with a fun, family-friendly event. Join us Memorial Day morning at Depot Plaza in downtown Lynchburg for a 10K run or 2-mile walk, followed by food and fun. Come for a healthy way to honor the holiday. Most importantly, your participation benefits Tide, the type 1 diabetes experience. Tide supports individuals living with type 1 and type 2 diabetes so they can live their best lives. Register now at Tide.org. That's T1DE.org to join us for the 2025 Memorial Day 10K run and 2-mile walk for the type 1 diabetes experience.
Have you looked at your home's exterior lately? Do you see faded siding, paint peeling, and wood rotting, windows that are impossible to open and close, and gutters falling off? Call Collins Siding and Windows to transform your home's exterior and save you money on energy costs. Dreaming of a new porch or sunroom? Collins can do that too. Since 1989, Collins Siding and Windows has been transforming homes in Central Virginia. Roofs, windows, siding, gutters, porches, decks, and sunrooms. They can do it all. Call Collins Siding and Windows today, 434-525-6307.
Welcome to the Villas at Oakwood, offered by Oakwood Villas Retirement Homes, LLC, the best kept secret in Bedford. Our stunning community offers spacious, one-level modern villas with top-of-the-line amenities. Enjoy a walk through our landscape community, connect with neighbors in our clubhouse, and take in the views of the peaks. Visit thevillasatoakwood.com or contact Robin Lee Sage at 434-238-4477, brokered by Legacy Realty and Development.
Do you know what a cold climate heat pump is? They're a new generation of heat pumps from Tara Lee Mosley that provide substantially more heat than traditional heat pumps, even when it's 5 degrees outside. This means your electrical auxiliary heat runs less, saving you big time on your electric bill. And with the recent spikes in electric utility rates, that's crucial. Plus, these new heat pumps qualify you for a $2,000 federal tax credit. Contact Tara Lee Mosley for more info on the new cold climate heat pumps.
Big Boys Guns can thankfully say we serve Central and Southwest Virginia as we've done for over a decade. We've learned some people know exactly what they want, while some prefer a helping hand. That's why our staff won't judge your knowledge. We're just excited to greet you and help you in finding that perfect firearm or accessory, because everyone is at a different stage of responsible gun ownership. Our advice is free, and we even have concealed carry classes. When you're ready for responsible gun ownership, come see us. Big Boys Guns on Route 460 in Blue Ridge.
Hi, this is Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech men's basketball. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
I have a feeling that our next guest is probably on a different wavelength than I am in terms of tonight's big softball matchup, as ABC 13 WSET sports reporter Dave Walls with Friday Night Football Extra on Friday nights in the fall, and then Full Court Press in the winter in high school basketball. Those shows that start after or right around 11 p.m. on ABC 13 WSET, 11 or 11:15. Please forgive me. I've got time to get that right with Dave Walls. But, Dave, you're used to being up late. So 10 o'clock first pitch for Liberty at Oregon may not bother you the way that it will bother a morning bird like me.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ed, first of all, how dare you bring up high school football in May? We need a summer vacation first, man. Give us a little break here. But seriously, 10 o'clock, for me, that's like prime time. That's, getting ready for the 11 o'clock show. I'm furiously editing and writing and while some people are getting in their pajamas and calling it a night. So, yeah, that for me, I'll watch the whole thing tonight. I don't care if it goes till 2 or 3 a.m. I mean, some of those games against Texas A&M, they were 3-4 hour affairs. I guarantee I'm going to watch the whole thing tonight. So, and I'll be in my home, and I'll be cooking dinner at about 2 a.m. and that's a day in the life, watching sports and just relaxing even when everyone else is asleep. So work never stops.
It is the nature of our job that work pops up all the time in sports media. Dave Walls does it well. We're glad to have him back with us here in the Fast Lane. Dave, Liberty softball themselves. Of the 3 Liberty teams that have faced the Oregon Ducks, I'll put football in a different category because, I mean, with all due respect to Liberty, now that we've had 2 NFL drafts since Liberty played Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl and like 25 Ducks have been selected or something ridiculous, it's understandable that Liberty was at a disadvantage in the Fiesta Bowl. But is this the best opportunity that Liberty has to beat Oregon, if nothing more than the fact that, they kind of were cooked at the beginning in basketball, whereas this team, they've got a lot of experience already, having just beaten number 1 Texas A&M in the Super Regional, or in the regional to get to the Super Regional.
Yeah, this is a totally different animal where you can say, like, look, as great a years as Liberty basketball had, a Liberty football had when they were in the Fiesta Bowl against Oregon, you can clearly say that, like, look, the Ducks in those sports are just ahead based on the competition they face year in and year out. Softball is just a different animal. Liberty and Dot Ridgeland, they schedule these tough teams. They play the number 1s in the country, the 2s, the 3s. They play the ACC. They get out there and they play these big name teams. And so they're not intimidated. And I mean, frankly, what's going to intimidate them at this point when you just put on a 3-game war with the number 1 team in the nation on their home turf and you won? And Oregon is a good team, but so I'm not going to sit here and take anything away from them. But how is taking on a number 16 seed going to intimidate you when you just took on the 1 seed in a game that, frankly, Texas A&M destroyed everyone else they played in that regional? Clearly, Liberty has proven that they not only belong, they are here to win. And if Oregon, who is not coming in 100% healthy, I know Liberty isn't either, but Oregon's had some injuries in that regional out in Eugene, barely had to scrape by to get a walk-off win in that one. I mean, this thing, I think, is up for grabs. If Liberty can keep that same intensity and just focus on their game, I think this is right there for the taking.
It is. I would make Oregon a slight favorite. I don't pretend to be the expert when it comes to sports booking, particularly with softball. I'm not that type of guy with that type of knowledge, Dave. But Liberty having a chance, we know about the intangible qualities, the belief, the fact that they've just done this. They've shown resilience. Dr. Dot Richardson and the players have said they're not satisfied being there. But how much of Liberty's chances also hinge on this fact? They now have shown they have 2 pitchers with Elena Escobar and Caitlin Yoder who can come up big, and they have a lineup that may not be as deep as like Oklahoma, although I don't know whose is in softball, but they have plenty of options as well to go to for offense if things start to get bogged down in other areas.
The Liberty offense is the lineup up and down has that ability. They are that team, and they can get it done. And you're right. They have shown that they have some great pitching. I think a lot of the success this weekend is going to rely on that pitching. Elena Escobar pitched so much this past week, and she is nowhere close to 100%. If you know anything about where she is right now, but she had to take herself out of that game 3 just because she had nothing left to give. But through over 400 pitches over 3 games, which is just insane. Caitlin came in for a little bit, so I think it's going to have to be another one of those weekends where the pitching is going to have to keep the Flames in it throughout, because when you're hitting right, everything goes your way. And when it doesn't, it can be one of those days. But Paige Bachman had a bit of an up and down ride through regionals, but she is right there as well. And you've got some other arms on the bench that you could possibly turn to if you had to. So I think the pitching is going to have to, again, keep the Flames in this one and give the bats the opportunity, so they don't have to necessarily put up a 4, a 5, a 6. If you can get by with a 2-0, a 2-1 type of win, that's the type of game that I know Dot Richardson would really, love to be in midway through, even if they're not leading, to have that kind of close game where they know just one big hit could break it open, and just stay away from the mistakes we saw so many times against A&M, where, a simple little mistake here allowed A&M to get second and third chances to get some runs in, and they capitalized that, making some of those games closer than maybe they should have been. So stay away from the errors, and lean on those horses on the mound, because they will carry you as far as they can take them.
Dave Walls, ABC 13 WSET, hanging out with us today here in the Fast Lane. Dave, we touched on Liberty softball. We'll pivot over to another local team for college in action in diamond-based sports. Baseball. The University of Lynchburg Fair to say that 7-4 today, with Rowan getting the victory and taking the early 1-0 lead in the best of 3 series against the U of L at City Stadium, that the Rowan offense was a little bit more than that stout Lynchburg pitching was, at least for today.
Yeah, it was an uncharacteristic shaky pitching performance from Lynchburg. We're used to kind of seeing, very composed performances, even if the opponent is able to knock in some runs here and there. It was just a shaky start, and again, had some trouble with location, especially in those early innings where Rowan was able to really turn the order over quite a few times. And this is kind of a situation they really haven't found themselves in since maybe the ODAC championship, but no, not even really, because they lost a game in the ODAC championship, but that they had already taken one over Randolph-Macon. Here, they're in a best of 3 and they've dropped game 1. So now you put it right back on your team. They've got to be able to win 2 straight games tomorrow, 11 a.m. and presumably at 2:30 tomorrow. You've got to basically win 18 innings tomorrow. And that puts a lot of stress on you when you're coming in. But I will say this, even though the bats maybe didn't hit at the level we are used to seeing, this was still a tie game going into the 6th or 7th inning. They were able to chip away and get 3 in the 6th, tied in the 7th, until Rowan was able to get a big 2 RBI double late in the game to kind of break this one open. But as much as Rowan was putting up 16 hits on the day, this was still a very close game. So you figure if you could take away some of those hits tomorrow, make it a little bit closer even in the hit department, you got a better chance of winning this one. So, it was kind of a C performance for Lynchburg, but yet they still had a reason, to think they could win this game late in the game today. So I think that's got to give Travis Beasley a little comfort and confidence that they did not play anywhere close to their best game. And he admitted that, but yet they still had a chance to win it. All you got to do is play your game a little better tomorrow, and you probably take game 2 and give yourself a chance to win game 3.
Speaking of local baseball, high school baseball, Jefferson Forest, they were undefeated until their arch rival Brookville shut them out 1-0 earlier this week. The Cavaliers did bounce back 10-0 over Amherst and locked up the number 1 spot in Region 4D action. That sequence for JF. Obviously, an undefeated season from the regular and postseason, if you can put it all together and win a state championship that way, is special, but that's really hard to attain. Is there value for JF now that they've dropped that game, shown they can bounce back, and maybe take some pressure off while also helping them relock in?
100%. I've always been a believer that when you if you have an undefeated run in a sport where you can drop some games and lock up a top seed, you're late in the season, you drop one of those games, and now you don't have to have this specter of, if we lose one, we lose everything. No, you go, okay, we still have the number 1 seed. We can go in, we can bounce back. And this is a team that frankly has only really had maybe 1 or 2 other even close games this year. I know back in April, they had a 1-0 win over LCA, which by and large is already a big enough win. But really, most of their games this year have been blowouts. And so when you drop a close one, you go, okay, we're human. And you refocus and you get right back into it. And I think it just takes the pressure off of having that additional stress of not only are we trying to win a state, but we're trying to keep this big O on our record. You don't have to worry about that. Go win the big title. That's the one that matters anyway.
It is. And that's the one that JF Baseball would like to attain, that a lot of other local sports teams would as well. Dave, we will touch on all of those, but we'll wrap it up on this. Eddie Renuska, career win number 200 as the men's lacrosse coach at EC Glass. I know this has not been the banner year relative to the lofty standards that they have over there, but there's still a team that's in postseason contention and will have a chance. What does it say about the stability that Renuska has brought, in addition to the memorable 2019 championship team that everyone knows?
Yeah, he has really been a driving force at EC Glass for lacrosse, and a sport that is still at the high school level in our area of Virginia. Still, I don't want to say in its infancy, but certainly is not maybe at the level of other varsity sports in high school. But what I will say is he has come to build this brand of EC Glass lacrosse to where, if you're going to take on the Hilltoppers early in the season, postseason, you're going to get an extremely dangerous team that's tenacious, fast, and is going to be there, playing late in May and into early June every year. They've, taken on plenty of out-of-state teams trying to make themselves better, getting no points in the VHSL, but certainly trying to improve their own brand of lacrosse. And, and when you play that level of competition, even if you don't go to Glass, when you play that level of competition year in, year out, that drives you to be better, and that only kind of helps build the sport in this area at other schools. So huge congratulations to just putting in the groundwork, and 200 wins with one program is fantastic.
Dave Walls, WSET, the Twitter account, and ABC 13 as Dave is hanging out with us today here in the Fast Lane. Dave, it's great to chat with you. We appreciate it. Enjoy all the action. And, well, I would say give you the energy for late nights, but I think we need it more than you do.
Hey, I got the pot of coffee on. Just come on over, man. You know, a little late night baseball, nothing better.
Nothing creepy about a knock on the door at 2 a.m. from somebody.
Call first, but at least call first. Yes.
Yes, that would be the kind, considerate thing to do, or I'll just at you at Dave Walls TV on Insta, or Dave Walls WSET, which is what the kids apparently do these days. Dave, thank you for your time as always. We love catching up with you.
That's great. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Indeed. Dave Walls with us here in the Fast Lane. When we return, Drew Dinsick. Time to nerd out on tennis, because why not? It's a Friday. French Open starts this weekend, and we'll figure out whether it really begins for the men's tournament now or in 2 weekends. We'll find out, among other topics, when we return. This is the Fast Lane on the VTR and Sports app, and ask that smart speaker open VTR and Sports.
Get more at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Get the best selection with more Hondas, more Hyundais, all your favorite makes and models. Over 900 used vehicles in stock now. That's way more than any other dealer in the area. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume all in one location on the Motor Mile. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with financing options for every budget. We finance your future, not your past. You're a valued customer and not just a number on the Motor Mile. Get more with straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Over 900 vehicles on the lot ready to choose from. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Hi, I'm Robert O'Brien with Lynchburg Ready Mix. At age 7, our son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Our world changed instantly. We had to monitor blood sugar, count carbs prior to every meal. It was overwhelming. Thankfully, groups like Tide provide support when your world changes. Their programs and resources help people with type 1 diabetes live their best life. So please join Lynchburg Ready Mix at the Memorial Day 10K run and 2-mile walk for Tide, so individuals like our son can still live an awesome life.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality, build with Right Choice.
At the Trost Law Group, the only basis upon which we judge ourselves is by the client's success. Everyone on our team understands our responsibility to our clients, which is why we'll do everything we can to be on top of our game for you. If you've been injured in an accident, you need a team who's focused on how they can benefit you. If you've been injured as a result of someone else's negligence, call the Trost Law Group at 777-HURT. That's 777-HURT, and put us to work for you.
At Easy Mobility Solutions, we're proud to support the Memorial Day 10K run and 2-mile walk for the Type 1 diabetes experience. For over a decade, Easy Mobility Solutions has helped individuals rediscover their freedom through our proven process: evaluate, educate, empower. Whether it's wheelchairs, stair lifts, platform lifts, or home accessibility modifications, we're here to make mobility easy. Join Easy Mobility Solutions on race day and support the Type 1 diabetes experience. Register at tide.org. That's T1,
Experience, reputation, growth. These are what make Brownstone Properties the area's most trusted property management company. With the recent addition of 15 new communities at Smith Mountain Lake, we have expanded our HOA portfolio to over 80 communities across the region. Combine these with over 2,500 residential units, and it's easy to see why our reputation and business continue to grow. Let our experience work for you. Visit us today at brownstoneproperties.com or 3720 Old Forest Road in Lynchburg.
You could do the same mundane meal for lunch. You could do the same boring routine for take home. Or you can make sure you get the best every time At Anderson's Country Market 2 in Madison Heights, sandwiches in the deli feature homemade bread and local veggies. Oh, and sneak in a sweet treat like homemade lemon bars and Yoder's oatmeal sandwich cookies or chocolate chip cookies. Anderson's Country Market 2 on the northern tip of Business 29 in Madison Heights towards Monroe.
At Big Boys Guns, one thing we've learned over a decade serving Central and Southwest Virginia is that you value the freedom to choose. That's why you'll find the largest selection of firearms, silencers, reloading equipment, ammunition, and AR-15 parts, all under one roof. And if it's not in stock, the BigBoysGuns.com web store shops warehouses on a live feed, so you'll know exactly when your product is here. Come see us on Route 460 in Blue Ridge and BigBoysGuns.com. That's Big Boys with the Z, Guns.com.
Hi, this is Bill Roth, voice of Virginia Tech football. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
To all of our fans in the audience who are both Virginia Cavalier fans and Dave Matthews Band fans, my wife would count as one of those. There's that old song, Wasting Time, and I don't know whether we're just wasting time with our next guest. Drew Dinsick of the NBC Sports Bet the Edge podcast network, as well as the Deep Dive with Andy Molitor that drops daily. He was, by the way, also on the Beating the Book French Open preview podcast that dropped within the last 48 hours right after the draws were announced yesterday. But Drew Dinsick is with us in the Fast Lane. Drew, first of all, we hope and pray that you and yours are well, certainly better than the last time we spoke when y'all were dealing with those tragic wildfires out in California. For the men's French Open, should we even bother previewing it right now, or should we just reconnect in, 2 weeks when we're getting ready for a Sinner Alcaraz final?
Well, if all you care about is who wins, then yeah, let's touch base into the French Open officially starts as far as who's going to win in that final. In my opinion, I have a pretty high probability that Sinner comes through on the top, pretty high probability that Alcaraz comes through on the bottom. Those are your two best men's tennis players on tour right now, and those are your two best men's clay players on tour right now, and the margin is relatively large. Haven't had sort of a situation like this in a while. Just like last couple of slams, we were transitioning from the big three into this sort of next generation, but the transition is officially over in my mind. Now, Djokovic may ultimately win his 100th title tomorrow. He may get a big fanfare, and there may be a lot of buzz and people excited about Djokovic as he is in the finals of Geneva playing against pretty woeful formed Hubert Hurkacz. But for my money, at least with this tournament, I don't rate him especially likely to be a factor in who ultimately wins or loses. And after that, it's a who's who of guys who are out of form, who have never done it before, and or just this is their wrong surface for them to make a run right now. And so I think ultimately the market is wise to this. You're seeing Alcaraz right now firm to, roughly a plus 100 favorite, which, again, for a guy who's only ever won this tournament once and has only ever won 4 slams, it's pretty crazy to see him at that price point. But I think it's warranted that he is your favorite. But for me, the big question as far as how do we bet this men's, beyond the fact that we have, 127 matches to bet on, or thereabouts. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm a factor high. Maybe it's only 63. But whatever the case is, we have a lot of match by match to bet on, and ultimately, I think that's kind of your angle of attack here. But for futures purposes, I'll take Sinner at this price. It's drifted to like plus 215. I think the margin between Sinner and Alcaraz is narrow. I know that Sinner has had a very difficult time defeating Alcaraz, particularly, in the last year and change. But if you go back and rewatch last year's 5-setter between these two players, the margins were razor thin. And Sinner's a little bit more well-rested player here. Sinner's a little bit more of a professional entity as far as less concerned about him, fluffing around in, one of the, week 1 matches. And so ultimately, I think that's the way to attack this futures market if all you're doing is playing the winner.
So I will throw this out there then, because I may or may not have I'm not we have certain curse words in the Fast Lane. Hope is one of them that we beat out. That's one that we always like to go to. But another one is parlay. We might as well just beat that one out because of the lack of value. That being said, Alcaraz center to win their quarters is about minus 110 to minus 120. You bet, 110 or 120 bucks, you get $100 in profit that way. Am I unreasonable for thinking like you might as well put something down on that? Because barring injury, I mean, nothing's a sure bet in sports, but like that to me seems reasonable. And then for about 2-1 odds, you can get them to just flat out meet in the final.
I like it. Honestly, it's all about math. I mean, it's what is your percentage for these players to reach that stage? And if you're telling me that your break-even percentage for a minus 120 bet is 58%, I think that we get Sinner and Alcaraz in the semifinals. My numbers say about 64% of the time. So I think that's a plus EV bet to parlay them. And if you really want to get funky and weird because you want a bigger payday, I like Lorenzo Musetti to win Q3. I think this is just happening. Like this is his time. He made a huge step forward in his slam performances last year, making the semifinals at Wimbledon. And then he has made the semifinals of every major clay tournament all spring long. Like if he does not win what is a wide open quarter for him, I'll be a little bit surprised, and you can get him in the plus 180 range. So you pair that with Sinner and Alcaraz, which we already talked about as relatively plus EV legs. I think you got yourself a stew going.
I like that idea. I might have to go back to the well on this and just add a little bit more. I mean, I did have Cerundolo, but I didn't do the, again, we don't want to get in trouble here, but parlay as we deep out the forbidden word sometimes in the fast lane, Drew Dinsick of the NBC Sports Bet The Edge and the Deep Dive podcast with Andy Molitor is with us here in the fast lane. While we're on the men's subject side, I've got Francisco Cerundolo at, plus 550, 5.5 to 1 odds for those that are less familiar with the sports betting parlance. He's in the same quarter as Zverev, no thank you. Medvedev, no thank you. And Novak Djokovic, which, 5 years ago, Novak could breeze through a tournament like he's doing now and then come right back around and then breeze through another one of these. At what point, though, do we start looking to fade Novak Djokovic just because he's the favorite in his quarter? But I have serious reservations that he might not even get out of the first week if he's that physically beat up because he's shown those type of vulnerabilities.
He sure has. He didn't lose last year at the French Open, but he didn't win, which means he withdrew before he took the court for his, the semifinal? Or it was a quarterfinal match against Rude, I believe. He pulled the ejection cord. And that was because he had 2 5-set marathons that preceded that, including one against Cerundolo, if I remember correctly, but certainly the one against Musetti, which was very memorable. And ultimately, is Novak Djokovic still good enough to win tennis matches against the kind of the run-of-the-mill journeyman, the Cam Norries of the world? Of course, absolutely. Can he do that in a best-of-5 setting where he is literally, you're asking him to go play tennis now for 3.5, 4 hours against these guys? Now it starts to get a little bit trickier of a proposition considering his age. My kind of handicap for Djokovic for the last 2 years now has been very non-quantitative and very trying to just read the tea leaves about what is he doing? What is he telling you about his preparation? What are his goals? Because if you just take the data and you have all of these, performances from these lesser tournaments that don't mean much to him, and you come up with a fair number, it is not even close to market, right? It is just it's a different player, right? But then he shows up at a slam and he kicks butt, and you're just like, wow, I guess I didn't see that coming. And you have to think to yourself, okay, well, was he playing possum? Was he saving it up for this moment? Did he think he had a chance at this tournament? And so he was trying to have himself peak for that 2-week cycle. And sure enough, there's plenty of examples where you can look at past slams and say that was what was happening. That was what was happening. Now, last year, I think it's pretty clear that he had kind of gotten to the top of the mountain in terms of reaching 24 Grand Slam victories. That was enough to be better than his peers in Federer and Nadal, which is an amazing accomplishment. And he didn't really look that sharp in the Grand Slams. And you're like, wow. So I guess it's not even that he's focusing on this anymore, is he's just done. And then he shows up at Roland Garros for the Olympics, and he played the best week of tennis I've seen him play in 2 years. And it's like, oh, okay. So I see. He got the number 24 slam, mission accomplished. Now he was on to trying to peak, prime himself to be peak performance for for that gold medal, which had eluded him to that point in his career. And it's like, oh, okay, this is starting to make sense. And then he was, of course, a non-factor the rest of the season. He's been a non-factor entirely this season until this specific tournament he's playing right now in Geneva. And from what everybody's saying, his wife, his family, his parents, like they're all like in Switzerland to witness this relatively random tournament run. And it's like, so he pretty clearly wants to win number 100. We get it. Like that's the goal. And he's put himself, through to the final. So he probably will. But if you're telling me that the goal then is to turn around and really compete for the French Open, not believing it, not buying it, you can sell that to someone else. It's not for me. I would believe that he is just kind of maybe even pulls the ripcord at some point and tries to get himself right for the grass season, which is right around the corner. His best chance of winning a slam for the rest of his career is this year's Wimbledon. Right? It's not next year's Wimbledon because he'll be a year older and a year more wear and tear. It's not the U.S. Open ever. The Australian Open, he is not ever beating Jannik Sinner on that court. I'm sorry, it's not happening. So, like realistically, I don't think he's ever beating Carlos on clay. I don't think he's ever beating Sinner on hard, which means he has one last chance to potentially get slam number 25, which would be Wimbledon. So, if you see a little bit of a disinterested Djokovic in Paris, don't be surprised.
Might be a good betting opportunity to fade him as Drew Dinsick is with us here in the fast lane. Might be eyeing the same thing that I am. It's like two people at the grocery store eyeing the same item and just hoping it's not the last one in stock. As Drew Dinsick is with us here in the fast lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville Southside, and all across the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Drew, we touched on the men's side of things for quite a while. And look, I know you're a Federer guy. I'm a Djokovic guy as far as a player, but I'm with you on everything you said. I think you can only mainline it so many times the older you get and the more your body wears down. And, you remember the old Sports Illustrated back in the day where they used to have like this week's sign of the apocalypse, and this week's sign of the apocalypse is Djokovic is blowing off a grand slam so you can focus on like a 250 level victory here.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that said, I might be wish casting, I might be dreaming here. He got a good draw. I mean, if you're a Djokovic fan and you want some, a little bit of some silver lining here, his draw is awesome. Like he could very clearly get it to week 2 without much of a headache. Moutet is a difficult second round opponent just from a style of play, but he could definitely beat Moutet. Ugo Humbert would be the 4th round opponent likely for him. I don't think Medvedev's getting there. So Humbert is a difficult opponent, but not unbeatable. We talked about Cerundolo gave him a hard time last year. That's probably, in my opinion, who he's facing in your quarterfinal, if not Zverev. So I mean, there's a chance that he actually does just carry his form from Geneva into Roland Garros and does better than I expect. But I'm kind of wish casting that he does take he doesn't. You just don't want him to have another one of the ab injuries like he had in Melbourne, right? The ab injury he got there, that derailed his entire winter and early spring. And I think he needs to keep himself right for a Wimbledon run. And I would love to actually an opportunity where the market just completely gives up on him. And then he is somewhat of a threat in Wimbledon and we get him at a decent price.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad if we're getting these like 12-1, 20-1 odds on him. It might be worth a roll of the dice right here as Drew Dinsick is with us in the fast lane, playing the lottery, if you will, which is what I admittedly have called women's tennis for quite some time. You seem to be, and if I recall correctly from the Deep Dive podcast that you've done the last couple of days with your buddy Andy Molitor, and of course the Beating the Book podcast that you did to preview the French Open with Gil Alexander, and of course we're a VSiN partner as well here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. You seem to be more convicted on the women's side, at least in 2, in Arena Sabalenka and Coco Gauff. How convicted are you relative to Sinner and Alcaraz that those two will be there? If you had to pick which likely pairing are we more likely to find in the semis or even the final, is it Sabalenka Gauff or is it Alcaraz Sinner?
It's Alcaraz Sinner by an order of magnitude. It's not close. I think the funny thing about the men's, and to use a tennis podcast term of parlance here, the men's draw is a mix of 2. The women's draw, in my opinion, is a mix of 8. There's about 8 women who ultimately, if they win this trophy in 2 Saturdays, I guess 3 Saturdays because it's only Friday. In 3 Saturdays, if this woman lifts this trophy, will you be surprised? There are 8 women I would say in this draw that it would not surprise me. I would just be like, yeah, okay, this checks out. Better than a 1% chance this was going to happen. Can't be surprised, right? Like the exception to the rule would be like last year's Wimbledon where Barbara Krejcikova won. Like she had a 0.02% chance to win. Like it was nothing, and that completely came out of nowhere. But this year, the cream of the crop in the women's tour is deep, and it is a step above, right? It's a class above. So I think we are going to get some pretty chalky results ultimately here. But the Coco Gauff, again, like I'm not really usually ever a Coco Gauff guy. I went to war with her last year at Wimbledon, and she had a super soft draw and just completely airmailed what was a golden opportunity to get a Wimbledon title. And so I'm always a little gun shy clicking that submit on a Coco future, but the draw is lopsided, period. It's lopsided. And when you are playing a futures market, that should always be the first thing you're looking for, right? Like, is there a world where the bet that I place gains equity without my player even taking the court? The other half, there are going to be really, really strong competitors that are going to be running head on into each other round after round after round, and by definition only one can advance. So you will have good players lose on the top half of the draw, and that equity will automatically dump into the Coco Gauff bucket, which is kind of my favorite way to play a futures pool. Now there are 2 women on the bottom who I think qualify as in the mix. One of them is Mira Andreeva. The other is Coco Gauff. Mira Andreeva is kind of your ingenue up and comer. She wins Indian Wells this year, which is her first 1,000 title, and that was an eye-opening performance too, because she went toe-to-toe with Sabalenka and just dropped the hammer. And I don't see that coming. Like that was very, very good performance from her in the biggest match of her life to that point. So she's got the ability to do it. The problem is she has a Coco Gauff problem. She has gone head to head with her now 4 times and just cannot find a way into her game. So Gauff is prone to double faults and beating herself at times. She does have some mental demons where she just kind of gets, a little bit upset that call didn't go her way, shot just missed. What she wanted to happen in a given rally didn't happen. And so, I will be doing a lot of body language doctor watching her matches in the early rounds, hoping to see that she's kind of in a good headspace. But I think ultimately it's 2 women who potentially could get to the final from the bottom. And just considering the head-to-head success, you got to tip Gauff there. And then the top of the draw, man, like it could go a dozen ways, and I'm not really going to be surprised here. Sabalenka should get there, but she has had wild demons at this tournament, in the semifinals in particular. And, she's going to face a tough competitor coming out of that second quarter, be it Iga Swiatek, Elina Svitolina, Paolini. The list goes on. There are Rybakina's in the second quarter. Ostapenko's in the second quarter. Like there are 4 Grand Slam winning women and Jasmine Paolini all in Q2, and one of those is going to face Sabalenka in the semifinals, which is going to be the toughest test of this run for her. That's even accepting the last woman who won a title at this venue, which was Zheng Xingwen at the Olympics last year. So it's she has to defeat her just to get there. So I'm not going to act like there's any surprises as we watch what plays out on the top of this very, very top-heavy draw. And I kind of just hope whoever comes through to face Coco Gauff in the final is taking a little damage.
I would just say this much as somebody now who needs to advise you to follow Drew Dinsick on Twitter at @whale_capper. And of course, subscribe to the Deep Dive podcast he does daily with Andy Molitor, among his other appearances. But by the way, the best thing you did this week was coming up with a term for my guy, Big Dom, the security guy in Philadelphia, calling him Chief Vibes Guy, which is phenomenal. You are going to be my Chief Vibes Guy to help guide me through who has the wrong vibes here at the French Open, especially because I've got Shinjin Wen at 23-1, and
Nice.
the vibes don't work well with Sabalenka. And I've got Andreeva at double digits as well, and the vibes aren't good with her in golf. I might need your consultation, Drew, to help me follow the vibes, since you are now our chief vibes guy here in the Fast Lane.
Hey, you want some? It is head to head is meant to be corrected. Honestly, it's an indication of past, and sometimes some players they never solve their opponent. Think about like Gael Monfils and Djokovic, right? Like that head to head is something like, I'm just off the top of my head, 1 in 26, right? Like you just never ever solved them, right? Verdasco and Federer, I feel like was like that too, right? Nadal and Rebredro, right? Like there's a couple of like kind of clear matchups where it's just like so lopsided that it's like, man, he played him how many times and never won? That seems impossible. But that said, there was a long time where Coco Gauff was just a pigeon for Iga Swiatek, particularly on clay. Like it just wasn't a fair fight. 3 years ago, the French Open final was unwatchable. There was no fight there. And you blink, and Swiatek loses a little bit of her fastball. And in Madrid this year, Coco Gauff just absolutely laid her down. Like 6-1, 6-1, not a contest. And so it's like, okay, like it's a lopsided, head to head is never permanent, especially when you have a player like Andreeva who is learning and will have, what you tried last time didn't work. What you tried last time didn't work. Maybe what she tries this time will be a little bit more effective. And for a player like Zhang, there's a much greater silver lining, which is last time she faced Sabalenka, she slayed the dragon finally. Like she beat her head to head convincingly in what was her best performance of the year to this point. Zheng Qinwen did not play a lot of tennis in the opening salvo of the season in Oceania because she was dealing with some injuries. So she's a little bit less, kind of been put through the ringer. Like Sabalenka has played a ton of matches already this year. And it is a very physical sport when you put this tennis on clay. And so I think there is definitely a world where Zheng Qinwen can repeat her success from ousting Sabalenka in Rome. And I mean, just the fact that Sabalenka has never won a title here and Zheng Qinwen has a gold medal to her name here. And oh, by the way, that gold medal fueled by slaying the dragon that was Iga Swiatek last August. Like there's certainly, some reason to feel like there's been a vibe shift for both of those women.
Well, I appreciate the words of encouragement from Drew Dinsick, who's with us here in the Fast Lane, chief vibes guy for us, and the deep dive with Andy Molitor, that podcast, as well as with NBC Sports Bet the Edge. Drew, we'll wrap it up on this. I don't even think there's a point in asking about long shots, at least to win the men's. You've kind of given us your quarters preview. But for the women, you mentioned you've got a grouping of the top 8. Women's, there is that lottery element of somebody catching fire like Barbora Krejcikova did last year. Are there players you have your eyes on where, even if the price drops a little bit after a round or two, if they look healthy, if they look in form, if everything looks like it's going the right way, that are, maybe 30-1 or deeper in terms of the odds, where you go, I'm going to be monitoring that player on the women's side to potentially shake things up if the path opens up?
Yeah, there's a very easy answer here, and it is a player that I remember kind of coming up with betting as she was coming onto the scene. She is now age 30. She's a mom, married to Gael Monfils, and it is Elina Svitolina. Right now, she is the last of 8 in terms of my in the mix players, and her price right now compared to Jasmine Paolini does not square at all with the fact that those two women are almost dead even in terms of my clay rating for them. And they're going to come head to head in round 4. Svitolina, by the way, she's been hugely elevated in terms of, last year and change performance, kind of carrying the energy and the vibe for Ukraine, and going up against a lot of Russian and Belarusian women, very, very famously, and coming away with impassioned victories. So she could be the one that does ultimately stop Sabalenka in a semifinal. She is almost surely going to be your representative in the fourth round against Paolini. Again, I would tip her in that head-to-head against Paolini, and presumably she's drawing an Iga Swiatek, a Rybakina, an Ostapenko, maybe even a Kostyuk in that quarterfinal. And I think she can take on any of those women, given her peak form on a given day. So Svitolina is a long shot price just to win Q2 because it is so star-studded. It would like if there is such a thing as like this year in women's tennis has a theme to it. Madison Keys finally getting it at the Australian Open. Svitolina finally getting one at the French Open. Like, this would be amazingly great stories for the sport of tennis. And so, just even beyond liking her at price and believing she has a chance, it would be awesomely cool if she ultimately won a title here.
The vibes would be high from our chief vibes guy and plenty of others. Drew, thank you for joining us in the fast lane. We really appreciate your going longer than you had to go, which of course you don't have to go long at all, but we appreciate you going along with us today in the fast lane. We'd love to catch up every couple of weeks as this tournament gets going and underway. And maybe in 2 weeks we can preview what might be the men's event that we all knew was going to come.
You don't need to twist my arm to talk tennis. Appreciate you having me, and best luck this fortnight.
Indeed, our pleasure. Drew Dinsick with us here to wrap up the fast lane. That does it for us today. Appreciate your time. On to whatever's left of Make It Rain with Adam Shine. Then game 2 tonight, Edmonton, Dallas in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll have that action this weekend. We have the NCAA men's lacrosse. Not as much promotion as normal because Syracuse, the only local or ACC team. Richmond came close, but they missed it against Cornell. Can get a shot off late against the Big Red last week in the Elite Eight. So there's one ACC tie there. And of course, we'll keep it locked to everything else and be back with you not Monday, but Tuesday in the fast lane. In the meantime, have a great Memorial Day weekend and join us 8 a.m. for the Memorial Day 10K walk and 2-mile run for the Type 1 Diabetes Experience.
Heading to YouTube, head to youtube.com/@VTRN Sports Lynchburg to watch both the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle and the fast lane with Ed Lane